For those of you who have been coming to our temple, you've probably heard. Yeah, there's a seat. There's many seats. There you go. You've probably heard that we're in the Kali Yuga. The age of Kali means the age of what? Quarrel, conflict. Has anybody here ever felt conflicted?
Every day.
There's an honest person. This is the age of conflict. Yeah, we have mixed feelings about things, right? Almost on a daily, sometimes an hourly basis. How about, have you ever felt conflicted with other people? Woo! How about, have you ever felt conflicted with God? No?
Not for a while.
Not for a while. Okay. What about that earthquake last week? Hey, if you're all merciful and all good, why didn't you stop that quake? A whole branch of theology called theodicy, the problem of evil. Okay, so what I'd like to do tonight is talk about conflicts, and specifically, well, I thought I brought a Gita too, but I didn't. Oh, there's one right here. Yeah, I might not even need it. You see how conflicted I am? So, yeah, the Bhagavad Gita is really, you can read it as a book of how someone had a conflict, and the person's conflict, with the help of the person's counselor, overcame the conflict. Yeah, so, and the Bhagavad Gita happens to be one little tiny section of the Mahabharata, if you know that. Mahabharata's a vast, like it's 8 times as big as the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. It's supposed to be the longest epic poem ever written, 100,000 verses. So the Bhagavad Gita is only 700 verses. It's tucked in there in the what's called the Bhishma Parva, the Bhishma section by Krishna. Brilliantly. Yeah, the history of ancient India. It ends up with a big war, the Kurukshetra war. So Krishna is such a brilliant stage director. He staged it like this. You've heard about all the different intrigues and the histories and the Pandavas and the Kurus, and then it was all building to, it was a conflict between the Kurus and the Pandavas, and they were actually of the same clan, but then they began warring with each other, so it was called the Kurus and the Pandavas. And so then the only way to solve the conflict, unfortunately, was to have a war. Hopefully our conflicts don't have to get to that, although, sometimes that's what happens. Just look at what's going on in the news today, right? So, so Krishna tried to prevent this war. He even went to try to talk peace into the different parties, and they were having none of it. Krishna as the envoy from the Pandavas, he went and he said, look, Duryodhana is the big villain in the Mahabharata. So Krishna said, look, the Pandavas, they're Kshatriyas, they're warriors like you, they're leaders. They need something to administrate, to rule over. Just give them each a village. There's 5 of them, just give them 5 villages. So Duryodhana infamously replied, I will not give the Pandavas even as much land as can fit under the point of a pin. So he was bound and determined. It was all his way. He wanted it all, right? So Krishna said, okay, that's what you want. I tried to avoid this bloodbath. So, So we can see, so then the two armies lined up at Kurukshetra. You can still go there. There's an actual railway station. You can go to India and get off, and then it's there. There's a big plane, and so they lined up 640 million warriors. It was kind of like the Super Bowl of wars. Warriors heard about this from all over the world, so they all wanted to come and fight on one of the two sides. And the Pandavas were outnumbered, 11 big divisions to 8, but they had Krishna on their side because Duryodhana chose that. He chose the numbers over Krishna. So just before the war, as you probably know, Arjuna said, Arjuna uvacha senayoru bhayor madhye rathang sthapaya mechuta yavaretam nirikshayam yodukama namastitam taimaya sahayodavam asmin ranasa budhyane. O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies, so that I may see who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms. Now, this is obviously, as Prabhupada points out in his commentary to this shloka, this is a stall tactic. I mean, if two armies are lined up to fight, and he's saying, wait a minute, I just want to see who's here. You know who's here. Look, there's the Kurus, and there's Bhishma and Drona. So Krishna very smartly, he drew the chariot up in between the armies, facing Arjuna's martial and the Pandava's martial arts guru, Drona, and Bhishma, the person who was had been looking out for their welfare as they were growing up, but they circumstantially were on the wrong side. But that's just the way it went. And so, so that's in the first chapter of the Gita. Arjuna's he's stalling, and then he says, "How katam Bhishma maham sanke dronam chadha madhusudana ishubhi pratayotsyami pujar harvani sudana." Oh, Madhusudan, oh Krishna, how can I counterattack with arrows in battle men like Bhishma and Drona, who are worthy of my worship? They're my teachers. They're my elders, my well-wishers. How can I do this? How can I do this? So that was arranged by Krishna, that he just drew the chariot up right in front of Bhishma and Drona to give Arjuna cold feet. He said, Nayotsya. I will not fight. He had a conflict. He was a warrior. He's born to fight. There's a need for a class of people who have to fight when there has to be, when they can only solve things by a fight, then you got to have people ready to fight. So he didn't want to fight. And why didn't he want to fight? Well, he had 5 reasons here. Yeah, compassion. He didn't want a bloodbath. He didn't want all his friends. Can you imagine if your spiritual master told you to go kill your friends and family? Of course, he wouldn't do that. But in this extreme case, this is what Krishna was asking Arjuna to do. Kill your friends and family. They're on the wrong side. That side is ruining the world. They're adharmic. They're impious. They're irreligious. They're just running the whole planet into the ground. Sound familiar? Okay. Compassion. So Arjuna didn't want to fight. That sounds like a very good reason. He's a saint. He's a soft-hearted devotee. Enjoyment. King Norajena Govinda, King Bhogayar. I won't enjoy. Look, even if I win, if they're all dead, then how am I going to enjoy? Right? Because we're social beings. Right? If I was sitting up here practicing my talk and you weren't here, it wouldn't be so much fun. But I see you, and I see you responding or not responding. And so there's some rasa, there's some relationship. So what it doesn't make any sense. And then family destruction. Look, if all the men, because all the men in those days, there were no women in the military. So maybe there won't be either. Sound familiar? So, yeah, family destruction. If all the men die, that means all the brothers and the sons and the husbands, they're all going to be dead. And that means the women are going to be unprotected, vulnerable to exploitation by rogues. And there's going to be, that means they might be raped, there might be unwanted population. No good. This is good. And also it's sinful to do this, to fight this kind of war. This is not a good war, Arjuna is telling Krishna. And I don't want the karma for that. I don't want the sinful reactions for that. And then finally he said, look, I don't know what's better, conquering them or being conquered by them. The sons of Dhritarashtra, whom if we killed, we should not care to live, are now standing before me on this battlefield. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's a lose-lose, Krishna. I'm totally bewildered. Now, that first chapter of the Gita, Arjuna is doing all the talking. Now remember that you can read the Gita as a conversation between a counselor and the person who needs counseling. Krishna just letting Arjuna vent, get it all off his chest. Tell me all about it, Arjuna. What's on your mind? What's your problem here? So when Arjuna realized that I'm totally baffled, only you can help me, Krishna. Yeah. What's the verse? Karpanya. What's the translation?
Oh Krishna, now I am bewildered, now overcome with grief, and my bow is falling from my
No, that's another verse. 2:7 is Karpanya. I remember the Sanskrit, but what does it mean? Now I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure due to miserly weakness. Miserly weakness. I'm strong, but my strength is being completely, squandered by my confusion. Now I'm asking you to tell me clearly what is best for me. Now I am a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Surrendered means he's going to start asking questions. Doesn't mean blind faith. He's surrendering to Arjuna as his guru. And Krishna's going to say later in the Gita, yeah, you got to surrender to a guru, but you got to do it with service and submissive inquiry. Ask good questions. Don't just ask me about the weather or what's for dinner or whatever. You got to ask me meaningful questions. Okay. So let's see here. And these questions, if you read the Gita in sequence through karma yoga and bhakti and jnana, the questions take you higher and higher and higher to the point where at the end, after Arjuna asked Krishna dozens of questions, open-ended questions, which let Krishna really expound, not yes or no questions. He let him really expound, let Krishna really expound on the meaning of everything. Time, nature, who's the real controller, what is it? What about the soul? What about the soul? Is there a soul? Am I a soul or a body? And what's going on? And finally, karma, free will, destiny. Am I responsible for anything? Yeah. So Krishna answers all these questions. First of all, he gets real blunt. He said, Arjuna, you have all these so-called good reasons for not fighting, but they're all based on a misconception of who you are and who all these people are and who I am and what reality is. While speaking learned words, You are mourning for that which is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you. All the whole second chapter, from say text 11 through 30, is all about the difference between matter and spirit, and who's really pulling the strings, who's controlling everything. Okay, so as Arjuna became Krishna's, this is interesting, as Arjuna became Krishna's medium, or you could say the means to reveal the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, Arjuna, he's an intimate friend of Krishna's. Ordinarily, he would never become weak-hearted in this, but it was all arranged by Krishna. So Arjuna could take our part, so he could ask all the questions that we have, or that we never maybe even ever thought of, so we could be enlightened. So, now, so the Bhagavad Gita is our basic text, but then the moments of conflict and the moments of confusion, they're throughout our literature. And the sequel to the Bhagavad Gita is a book called Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the personality of Godhead. And the confusion never stops, because it's telling more and more and more about, in even deeper ways, about how to resolve our conflicts, and through the story of Krishna's various avatars and incarnations. I'm going to, oh boy, it's getting late, but I want to read a little bit. Or maybe there's not time for me to read the verses. Well, I'll read a couple of them because they're really key here. Yeah. So, as Krishna used Arjuna as a kind of foil, or Prabhupada uses the word medium, to enlighten us with the Gita, so Krishna similarly used a great king named Parikshit Maharaj, and there's his guru, Shukadev Goswami. He used Parikshit Maharaj as a medium, Prabhupada says, to present the whole Srimad Bhagavatam, to present the whole beautiful story of the personality of Godhead. So, Ekada, once upon a time, one day, Ekada, Maharaj Parikshit, while engaged in hunting in the forest with bow and arrows, became extremely fatigued. So Kshatriyas, or warriors in Vedic culture, they're allowed to hunt because they have to stay in shape. They have to know how to kill if there's any attack from an enemy. So they're allowed to practice on ferocious animals that might attack villages. Don't forget, there's no big cities. There's no Tucson, or there's no Phoenix, or like that. So they hunt tigers and lions and stuff like that. So while he's hunting with bow and arrows, he became extremely fatigued, hungry and thirsty, while following the stags. Well, this says deer. Uh-oh, there goes my ferocious animals. I guess sometimes they're ferocious deer, I don't know. While searching for a reservoir of water, he entered the hermitage of the well-known Shamak Rishi and saw the sage sitting silently with closed eyes. This is the prelude to the whole speaking of the Bhagavatam. What happened was this warrior king, Parikshit Maharaj, he's hunting, and he gets really tired. It's kind of the end of the day. And so he happens upon a hermitage where a sage named Shamak Rishi is there. Now, Shamak Rishi, just by Krishna's arrangement, happens to be in samadhi. He happens to be in trance, in a state of consciousness beyond the normal wakefulness, sleep, deep sleep, like that. So Parikshit Maharaj enters the hermitage, and he knows that he's not going to be received in a grand way, because the sages don't have a lot of opulence or money. But he just wants he just wants some water. So he comes in, but the sage is in trance. And so Parikshit stands there waiting for the sage to receive him. But the sage he doesn't even know the king is there, the warrior is there. So time passes, and Parikshit starts getting a little impatient, And then he starts thinking, what, you can't even give me a little water or a place to sit, a straw mat, and he gets mad. Now this is obviously out of character for this king, this warrior too. Maybe the child would be happier outside. Maybe. Hey, we'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay. Thank you, sir. So the king, he starts, this is nonsense. This nonsense. He made an assumption. Remember that word. He made an assumption that the sage was deliberately ignoring him. When actually the sage was just in trance. He was just in trance. So that the king became angry. And what he did was he saw that in the hermitage there, a snake had died. So he took his bow, because in those days it was bow and arrows, and he just picked up this snake, dead snake, and he put it around the sage just to sort of insult him. And then he walked out in a huff. And then on the way back to his palace, he thought, maybe, he started thinking of other alternatives. Maybe the sage was in trance. Maybe he was in trance. Maybe that's why, oh gee, I wonder if I did the right thing. He started getting conflicted. Meanwhile, the sage wakes up, sees the dead snake around him, and he just throws it off, and he didn't know how it got there, but it was no big deal to him. He was Dhira, he was a very sober sage. And then in the meantime, the sage's son, Shringi, hears about the fact that somebody had draped his father with a snake, and he was furious, and he came to the hermitage where he and his father lived, and he saw that there had been a snake there, and Father, what is it? Oh, no, nothing. Well, I heard that the king did this to you. He did this to you. It was a great insult. And the father goes, no, it was not. No, I was in trance. Probably they didn't realize I was in trance. Again, Shringi, he made an assumption that the king deliberately insulted the sage out of spite, like that. And he actually did, but the sage didn't care. So the boy, I forgot to mention that the boy, before he went into the hermitage, he cursed. He had the power of cursing. And that didn't mean he uttered some dirty words, swear words, but he cursed. I curse you that within 7 days you will die by the bite of a snake bird, which is not, there's a whole group of birds from Africa, or fish, they're ducks. They're like ducks. It's not those kind of birds. It's more like the mythical, more like the dragon, here, like that. You will be bitten by a snake bird in 7 days, and you will die. So Shringi proudly announced this to his father. I have cursed this rascal king. And so the king said, what? You've done a great wrong. How can you curse this saintly king? Yeah, I should have been awake. I should have received it properly, So assumptions, these are the big bugaboos that create conflict. So beware of assumptions. And to beware of but how do we do that? Because the funny thing about assumptions is a lot of the times what we assume is right. Based on our experience, we can make assumptions and we can sort of predict motives and things like that. But when they're not right, they can go really wrong, and we just we ruin our relationships, etc., etc. So how do we become aware of our assumptions? So here's a real trick. The trick is to, when we see anything we see, like if I walked in here today and I was wearing, say, just some board shorts, right? Or say I was wearing a tuxedo. So that you would observe that I was, you'd observe that, but immediately you might go to an interpretation of that. Oh, Why does he do? Why did he do that? This guy's nuts. Who does he think he is? He just wants to be different. He's wearing a, and by the way, it's gross. Come on, you're a skinny old man with wrinkly skin. We don't think you're buff or anything, you know. Come on, cut it out. Or a tuxedo. He thinks he's better than, he's asserting his superiority of you folks, you know, sitting there with casual, you know, smart casual clothes. So that we go so easily. We go from observation to evaluation or interpretation. It's just like second nature. But it's good just to observe things and not make any evaluations or interpretations of that. That's a good way to check our assumptions. And it's also very humbling to remember that we have 4 defects, as you've also heard if you've been coming regularly. Conditioned souls. Omar, how are we defective? Do you remember the 4 defects?
Fall under illusion, and you have like a cheating propensity.
We cheat.
Imperfect senses.
Right. Help them out. And we make mistakes. So that's, to err is human. Right? So that's humbling to remember that. If I think that everything I think and say is perfect, I got a problem, right? The sages say, Atmavan manyate jagat. Atmavan, according to myself, manyate, I think, the jagat, the whole universe is the way I think it is. That's called arrogance, foolishness. Yeah. And what else could account? I think, what else could account for what we're observing? Maybe Suresvara is wearing board shorts or a tuxedo because he wants to keep our attention. Or maybe there's something in the talk that's has to do with what he's wearing. Yeah. So it's really good not to jump to conclusions about what we're observing. So we need to be curious without being judgmental. We need to assume good intentions, that whatever we're assuming, it's good to assume that people they have good intentions. Trust your instincts, but verify your evaluation. Okay, so we might have an idea of the motive behind what we're hearing and seeing, but Ronald Reagan, actually, of all people, said, trust but verify. Trust but verify. And beware of projecting on others what we don't like in ourselves. Why are you so lusty, angry, and greedy? Uh-oh, I got 3 fingers pointed right back at me. Maybe I'm lusty, angry, and greedy too. Uh-oh. Yeah. Yes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions based on wrong assumptions. So if you read there was a goddess named Parvati who was flying around in a vimana, an airplane, and then she saw, no, she was on the lap of her husband, Lord Shiva, and there was a sage named Chitraketu flying around in this airplane. He was a celestial, and he had some celestial friends, and they passed over this place where Lord Shiva was discoursing on wisdom, and then but on Shiva's lap was sitting his wife, Parvati. So Parvati glanced up at the airplane and she saw Chitraketu laughing, and she thought that he was making fun with his friends of her husband, right? But actually, Chitraketu was just marveling that Lord Shiva, he's so independent that he can, discourse with his wife on his lap, and nobody will bat an eye because he's saying such wise and enlightening things. Yeah. And he's not really attached like we are. And so she cursed him. Parvati had that power to curse, so she cursed him. And then later on, she explained to her, no, this is not, this is Chitraketu, he wasn't making fun of me. So she tried to withdraw the curse, but Chitraketu said, no, that's okay, I don't mind. And then he was cursed to become a demon. So he became a demon, and then he went back, that's part of the whole pastime, going back to Godhead. The whole Bhagavatam is full of assumptions, conflict, misunderstanding, to teach us who are living in the age of conflict and quarrel, how to overcome these things. Yeah. So that's the message tonight, and later on we'll be presenting the book that can be read as the counselor and the counselee. And if you want, you can read it and learn all about how to avoid conflicts and overcome them. Okay, so it's 6:32. Are there any questions or comments for a couple of minutes? Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thomas Haribol. Haribol.
Assumption seems to be one of the main things your mind is doing all the time.
Yeah.
Your mind is your best friend in this case. Have you found any kind of, not ways to trick, but ways just to separate ourselves from our minds a little bit, to see that that's the churning of the mind that's creating this whole narrative around someone, and distinguishing that from ourselves, we're not that mind.
Yeah, that's the trick is we have to become a little, like I mentioned those things. One way to avoid conflicts is to be aware of our assumptions. How to do that? Observe, without interpreting. Don't be, we can't be so quick to evaluate and interpret and judge. We have to just be a little, not to embarrass Mother Sundamati, but she's very good at that. She hears people come to her. We all come to her at one time or another with what we're going through. And then she'll just take it in, and she won't react. She'll respond in her own good time. There's the difference between reacting and responding, right? You take it in, and then you think about it. And you think about it in a wider context, right? I might be having a bad day. That's why I, curse somebody so anyway, thank you for doing that. We just have to be a little thoughtful. Count to 108. That's a good way. Okay, one more. Yes. What's your name?
Mikhail.
Mikhail.
Hebrew for Michael.
Okay.
The original text. What is the greatest level of conflict that you've overcome in the most recent days?
Recent days?
Yeah, just curious what inspired you to bring this subject and how you can share your.
All right. Now I'm going to get exposed. I'm taking a seminar this weekend and next weekend on conflict resolution.
I knew it. I can tell.
Right? And you'll be happy to know that in ISKCON, I'll just end with this. In ISKCON, we have a branch of ISKCON. It's called ISKCON Resolve. It's a place where willing parties, all parties have to be willing to enter into this. It can't be imposed. It has to come from the people who are having conflicts. And we've become leaders in this field. Even the Catholic Church in Rome would never attempt what we're attempting. We are an international society like the Catholic Church. And people are coming from so many different backgrounds and languages and different mindsets and cultures. But we have this thing called ISKCON Resolve. One thing we have going for us is that we know that we're all really the same deep down. We're of Krishna. We're part and parcel of Krishna. But even the Roman Catholic Church, they don't even attempt conflict resolution on an international scale. They might do it locally within people who are have like-minded cultures. So it's really, and they come to us sometimes. They come to us. How do you do this? So, Jai.
What was your first conflict that
You caught me. Okay, that's another, maybe the next time. I've been told not to do confessionals, so.
Save it for the Catholic Church.
Okay. Yeah, right. Right, behind the privacy of the priest. Okay, thanks very much for listening, and now we'll resolve all conflicts by chanting Hare Krishna.
Thank you, that was good.